So, what is KitchenLib? It's a library utility tool that other mods can base themselves off. It is primarily designed around what's called GDOs or game data objects. Now, we will get into those a little bit later on. It's full of utilities and it's also got a preference manager similar to Preference System. Now, I do believe I would need Milo to confirm, but I'm pretty sure Preference System was originally designed as a wrapper for the KitchenLib preference manager, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. But it does contain a large number of utilities that people can use, regardless if they're doing GDO work or not. The first utility, the big one, is materials. So the materials, how do we make them? Lots of sliders. There are so many sliders to make a material, and it's just a mess when you need to make materials. If you want to do them in code, you can do them in code. This is the GUI that I have set up for us. It is still a little bit all over the place, but I do have a massive plan to rework this GUI very shortly. What I'll do, I'll pull us into a PlateUp game, and I'll explain how the GUI works, how everything is functioning for it. We also do have some code-based utilities inside of KitchenLib to make materials. So we do have the material utils class. That is a static class full of various things. You can make raw materials, you can make transparents, or you can just apply materials to game data objects. What's meant with materials? I'm not quite understanding what you're asking there. What do you mean by what's meant with materials? What are materials exactly? All right, so the materials, those are the what you put onto a mesh or a model to make it look like something that's not white. It is the texture that you apply. Typically with PlateUp, they're all just a solid color. You do have, if you see up here, like the flooring does have like an overlay. So to start off with this material creation, we'll hold Control, Shift, and T. That's going to open up our KitchenLib dev menu. We head over to materials. See our massive material cube open up here. And that's going to default to wood default, which is used on top of counters, for example. Now, these are the color sliders. We can actually change the color of this material here. We can do things such as the shininess of the material and the flatness. Now, there is a bit of a, after an hour of troubleshooting. Yeah, so it is the name of materials. They do need to be exact when you're using them. So we do have things such as overlays as well that we can use. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly pull up a transparent image and just create a smiley face for us. All right, so what I can do, if I enable this has overlay texture, you'll see we get sort of a cheese looking, I don't know how to explain it. It looks like cheese. That's the best way I think I can explain it. It looks like cheese. So it's just a noise texture that's generated for an overlay. And then you can pop in the path to your new overlay. So see, I've just put that file in, and now we have our smiley face. We do have these sliders to adjust the boundings of this overlay. Typically, I like to have the overlay nice and present, like prompt at the start. Changing the scale doesn't do a whole lot when your overlays set like this, but it is sort of The overlays are very finicky. I will say that. So you can change your overlay color here. Let's just say we have a green smiley face on an orange background. Looks terrible, but that's how it works. You can change your size of this material and such. There's a lot of different things that you can do with materials. So we have all the materials available around here that you can use for templates. You have existing shader templates. I'm not going to go too deep into them because that will take forever. So once we have our shader done, let's just call it smiley cheese and press export. So what that's done is just exported a JSON file to my desktop. I'll bring that up for us now. It converts that image to base 64 just so you can store it in a single file. And it creates this JSON asset file for us. Now to import these back into the game, we need to put them into an asset bundle. I'll get to these asset bundles very shortly. So we've covered all the sliders with materials. What do we have next? We have game data objects. Now these are something that confused myself when we first got into them and confused a few people. Not everyone's understanding the game data objects just yet. We also call them GDOs. That's what I'm going to be calling them throughout this session. So what is a GDO? Every single thing you see appearing and disappearing from this image is an appliance. That's a game data object, a GDO. And most things in the physical world of PlateUp is going to be a GDO. Cosmetics, items, appliances, anything that's tangible, other than the walls and doors and customers, have no clue why those aren't GDOs. They really should be, as far as I'm concerned. Other things like the restaurant themes, those are GDOs as well, such as the recent 2023 Halloween theme. We have the coffee shop. Those are all GDOs as well. And how do we make a GDO? That's a bit of a complicated process, but that's also why we're here to do it as well. I'll just pop that link in the chat for us as well. That is not the link that we needed to send. There we go. So it is a semi-complicated process. I'll quickly do a brief run through of the wiki. So we're just creating a class deriving from, in this case, custom appliance. So we do have a number of different customs, as you can see down here. And then once we've got all of our variables filled out, we simply register it in onPost activate. Nice and simple, pretty easy. I'm going to set up an example, do an example for us. And I'll send you the link so you can follow along. But I'll also go from scratch as well. Is there anything you wanted to add so far, Yari?
Nope. That's great.
All right, so here's our example link so far. And I'm going to close out of PlateUp as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you some assets in here. So these have some pre-made assets for us. That just has our example item, an item group, and a material that we're going to use. So there are multiple different ways that we can start a Kitchen Lab project. We can either start it from scratch, which I'm not going to go over today. We are going to use a mod template. So you can either use this mod template that I've sent in chat right now, or you can use the new PlateUp utility that I've got built with NPM if you have that installed. So I'm just going to go PlateUp in our CMD. I'm going to do a Kitchen Lib with assets project. So I'm just going to call this workshop example. All right, so what that's just done for me, that's just built our entire template from the ground up. Just got all of our assets and everything that we need to start off. So I'm going to open up Unity Hub, and I'm going to open up my IDE. Now for this example, I'll be using Rider. You can follow along with Rider or Visual Studio. You can do VS Code, or if you're using Vim, you can use Vim. Anything works for you. I'm going to trust and open this in Rider. And then I'm going to open up this Unity project here. So because this is a bare bones project, Unity does actually take quite a bit of time to load it up. So while that is going, we'll get started on the coding end. So if we have a look at our mod.cs, we have absolutely everything set up for us. It's all ready to go, which is a brilliant start for new developers and they're not 100% sure where to start. This is what we can use. So the first thing we have our asset bundle. That's being loaded by default with our template. Although we don't need to use this because sorry. You don't need to use this asset bundle if you're not going to be using assets. In this particular case, we are using assets as I've sent you earlier in the zip file. So this is just our logger. So we can log different various things. As you can see on initialize, we're logging that we're using our mod. So we have various parameters up here. We have our GUID, our name, version, author, and the game version this supports. What this is saying, this is using Semver. So Semver is a semantic versioning standard that we use here for PlateUp modding. And this means we can use this mod on anything above version 1.1.4. I'm not going to go into Semver. There we go. The bot is quite aggressive. The bot is very aggressive. It doesn't actually enforce the version. It just sort of categorizes it into tested and untested versions. You've probably seen in the Kitchen Libs mod menu, the tested and untested tab menus. That's how it categorizes them. So as you see, our Unity is still taking its sweet time because it is a bare bones project. But we will get started creating our custom game data objects. Let's just go into let's create a customs folder. This is where we're going to store everything. Our first one, we're going to make an example appliance. So for an example appliance, we need to derive custom appliance, and this requires us to have a unique name ID. This is what we use to generate our ID for the game. So I'm just going to use example appliance as well. You can do whatever you want, just make sure it's unique. So what we're going to do, we're going to public override our prefab. So this is going to be the prefab of the game object that we're using. So I'm going to use the material utils. Sorry, I'm mind blanking. The util in material util is called assign materials by name. The use of this is to make material assigning much easier, so you can do it directly in Unity. I've just had this pop up from Unity and I'll show you. So this warning is something you get with our template. This is because we are using the input system rather than the standard system. Just press yes and it'll be on its way. So for now, I'm going to just pass null because we don't have our prefab set up yet. But we're going to need some properties. So I'm going to go public override properties. And I'm going to open up dnSpy, because this will allow us to see all the different properties that exist within PlateUp. So we just drag all of these into our dnspy for our decompiler. So for example, we have C item holder. That's one of our properties. And you can see it's tagged with our component data. We've learnt this through ECS. It's also got iAppliance property. This is anything that you can attach directly to an appliance. So these are all the various properties that we can attach to our custom appliance, assuming we don't have a custom one already made. So in this case, we're going to use, if you want to see more. Yep. So the wiki does have, I'm not going to go in depth into everything and all our custom objects because we will be here for weeks. There are so many of them. So I'm going to just have a look. We have C no bad processes. I think that's something I'm going to use. I'm going to use C item holder as well. So what we're going to make here as an example appliance is going to be a really fast safety hob, essentially. So the first thing we need is C item holder. That's really basic. And then C no bad processes. So what we're doing here is saying this appliance can hold another entity item. We're also saying this appliance can't apply any bad processes to whatever it's holding. It's nice and simple. And then we also need to set up some processes. So similar to other appliances, like the hob, the safety hob, even some of the automated mixers, what this does is assigns processes to any item it's holding. So we're going to need to set up a new appliance process. Now this will throw a warning in both the code and in the logs. So far, it doesn't seem it actually causes any problems, so it seems okay. So there are a couple fields we need to fill out. We need to fill out the process field. And this is where some of our other kitchen lib utilities come in. So we need to cast something as a process, because that's what we need. We need to go to GDO utils. And as you see, we have a lot of utils. First, we're going to go with get existing GDO. Now, we could just throw in a random ID here. We don't know what ID that's going to come out for. So what we have is our references. So we have process references. We have references for every type of different GDO. These are all our different processes. Let's just set it to cook because that's what we want this test appliance to do. We're going to cook anything super quickly and it's not going to burn anything. So for our speed, our example GitHub says 2.5F. I'm going to set it to 5.5F for the sake of it being an obvious event. Is automatic, I'm going to set this to true. And the validity, I'm going to set that to generic. So we don't know 100% what all of these variables do, such as the generic validity. We do have some other options. I'm guessing it's just internal code. Is automatic is self-explanatory. Speed and process are also self-explanatory. So we also need to override something called an info list. So if we have a look at our custom appliance, this derives custom localized game data object. Everything that's localized will have an info list. And what we can do with this info list is set up our localization directly for it. So in this case, we're going to set up local English. And we can do new appliance info, or we do have our utils for this. All right, so let's have a look. We have our name here. We have our description and we have sections and tags. For this appliance, we're not going to use our sections or our tags. We're just going to set some names. All right, so Milo's just put a very nice description as to what the validity is for each appliance process. So I will get everyone to have a read of that quickly. So we also have, what we're going to do, we're going to set our name as example appliance. And just a description, we're going to use, this is an example. So that seems to be most of our custom appliance done. Now Unity is loaded up. Unity is ready to go. This is our bare bones Unity package. This comes pre-installed with our PlateUp asset bundler. That is in the previous template. I believe this one was made by Zeknik Z. I'd have to have someone confirm that. I'm not 100% sure who made this asset bundler. But this also comes with a lot of other packages that PlateUp also uses. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is get these prefabs that I sent out to everyone. I'm going to import these directly here into Unity. So we have a couple FBXs. I'm going to pop our material in here as well. So having a look at our appliance here, this looks like an absolute mess at the moment, so we need to clean it up. What's going on here is we have our collider. This is generated with a mesh. We don't want a mesh on it. So we just need to apply a collider, and that is all good to go. Now you need to ensure that you're using the right version of Unity, or else things such as colliders and asset bundles and various other things will not work. So we have our collider and we need to set up our nav mesh obstacle as well. So this makes it so AI can get around it, such as the customers, and the collider means we can't walk through it either. Now we have our hold point. That's where our holding item is going to be. So say I place down an egg on this bench. This is where it's going to sit, wherever this invisible game object is. Now this counter object here is mostly the model. And then I've just got some candelabras that I've thrown in the middle for the sake of an example. Now this is scaled correctly at the moment, but let's assume it's not scaled correctly. And it's extremely large. Most appliances are going to be the size of a standard cube. You can see this is a bit too large. If I bring this back down, you can see the appliance is the top half of a standard cube. So what you can do if you need to do something like that, you can always create something at empty, make sure it's 0, 0, and it's one scale of 1, and child it. In this case, we don't need to do any childing because it is already to scale. So we're going to make a prefab of this one, and we're going to put it in the mod assets asset bundle. So this is going to be set up in our asset bundle nicely. And there are a couple other things that we need to do. It's got no proper materials. You can see it's got the materials here, but that's predefined by the mesh. So what we can do, we can create some more materials. Let's say I want to do this super secret material. I'm going to create a super secret material, and we're going to pop it smack bang on top. Let's just make it green for now. There are a number of different materials that you can use. These don't have to look the same. These won't look the same in game whatsoever. Let's just call this one paint gold and do that for the sides. I honestly am not 100% sure if paint gold's even a material. I'm just throwing a name out there and hoping. We do have our material dump in Kitchen Lib Beta. Actually, I believe it's in the newest Kitchen Lib now. For example, we also need to put this material into the asset folder. So these materials don't need to be asset bundled, although this one does. The JSON one does. So let's press F6, and this is going to build everything for us. So while that's building, we've got as an example appliance is what this is called. Let's just go to our mod.bundle.load asset. Now it's going to be a game object. And it's called example appliance. So what this is doing, this is loading our game object and passing it through assign materials by name. So this is taking all of our named materials. So if we have a material called paint gold, it'll assign that material to wherever it's intended to go. Now the next thing we have to do now that we have our prefab set up is register the on hold point. So we need to do a hold point container. So we have our hold point container, and what we need to do, we need to assign its hold point. Now this is going to be a transform. So what we need to do is get the child object called hold point. So we're going to go game object utils.get child. So we're going to do game object prefab. Hold point. So we can see the root name is example appliance and the child is called hold point. Assuming, let's say we wanted to get counter doors, we'd do counter2/counter doors. But in this case, we just want the hold point. So this is our example appliance built and ready to go so far. So on post activate, we need to add our game data object and we are ready to go. So now we just hit F5 and build to PlateUp. And we watch the magic happen. We see it's done a successful build. You can see down here in the little corner, it's trying to launch PlateUp. All right, so we've loaded in successfully. And I'm just going to jump into a random lobby, and you'll be able to see what we have. All right, so we've called this example appliance. This mod is called Stuff on Demand by iSmilo. Absolutely brilliant mod. Allows you to spawn anything you want. Here we go. Here's our example appliance. So we can see our materials have set up somewhat properly. It's sort of because I just threw them together. Let's grab a turkey, throw it on. That's cooking relatively fast compared to the normal turkey. And it's not burning as well. That's what we want. Freezer burn? Yeah, it's freezer burn. All right, so let's go through here and have a look at our prefab again. If we notice, I changed this prefab, but it's not changed down here. What I need to do, I need to actually override and apply this. So now you see the prefab down here. This has actually been changed. So if I would hit F6 and rebuild everything, it would work as intended. So we'll see that once we come back into the lobby shortly. For the time being, we're going to set up our next item. And this is going to be an item group. This is essential when doing recipe mods. Item groups are used for when you combine two items or even more than two items. It's an insanely powerful tool and it's used absolutely everywhere. So chocolate covered banana dish, yep, that will use lots of item groups. So you could even use the ingredient lib that we learned yesterday, because that I believe that already has chocolate and ganache in there. So you'd be able to use that. And I believe it's got bananas as well already, actually. So you'd have most of your recipes sorted for you. So for this, we're going to just public override prefab. And we're going to leave this to null for now because we don't have a prefab set up. Has both wanted to make it easy for yourself? That's fine. Anything works. That's what ingredient libs for. It's to make it easier for development. We're going to override sets here. So this is going to be a list of item sets. So the way we need to do this, we need to create a new item set. And this is going to have another list called variable items. So we're going to use the same example as here, except rather than getting processes, we're going to get items. In this case, we're going to get milk. Why milk? Why not? And we're going to get some wine as well. Now, as far as I'm aware, wine isn't used in the game. It might be used in the game. Try to use base game chocolate directly. Isle has a replacement system. There is base game chocolate. Right, there is base game chocolate now. Point in case. I don't play the game much. I just mod it. I had no clue there was base game chocolate anymore. So we only have 2 items in our set. So the max is going to be 2. And the min is also going to be 2. We have a couple other ones here. Is mandatory essential is what we use for dishes. So if we were to have an item set with just a plate in it, that would have to be mandatory. Or else your sides will appear when you don't have a side and it will look like a mess. Trust me, I've learnt that the hard way. So what I'm going to do here, now that we've got this back up and running, I'm going to get our cup. Now, if we were to, if you have a look at it, it's offset and it's rotated wrong. If we were to use this cup as a prefab at the moment, that's how it's going to look in game. You don't want that. So we're going to need to rotate this. And I want to move this up just a little bit. Now, when we put this into the game, this is automatically going to get set back to 0, and so is this. So like I said before, we need to have a dummy game object, which is all zeros, and just set that as a child. So for the material, I'm just going to set it as paint gold as well. So we now have our example item group prefab, and I'm going to build this. Paint gold isn't a thing. Plastic shiny gold is. I'm pretty sure paint gold is. I'm not sure. We'll find out when this goes through. So material utils, assign material by name. And this is what we put in here. Now I do have GitHub Copilot, so that has filled that in for me. But that is what we'll have to do. We're going to assign register this as well. Now before we actually launch this, I'm going to register a dish. Now this dish is going to use a new custom item group. So same thing, we need our unique ID. And making a dish is a lot more, how will I say, complex. So we have this utility here. This is available as lobby option. This is based in KitchenLib. Material references. I'm glad we have material references. I'm not aware of this. No, I don't think you can send that commit. I've never seen this in my life. So another override we're going to do is required no dish item. What this means is when this dish spawns in, it doesn't spawn with plates. Because for this particular dish, we're not going to need any plates. Now, this is a localized game data object. So we're going to need an info list. This is relatively the same as the previous one. All right, so we have our name. This is example dish. And then we have a flavor text. Now, the flavor text is the small text that appears at a card. I'm just going to set up some basic variables about our dish. We're going to set this to a medium reward. And we have a starting name set in dish as well. Now, obviously, I'm not going through everything that we have for our custom GDOs because, like I said, we're going to be here for a long time if we do that. So this list is a list of names that your restaurant can be when you start with this particular dish. All right. So the next thing we're going to need is our minimum ingredients. So what the minimum ingredients is. So when you unlock this dish, whether you start with this dish at the beginning of a restaurant or you unlock it during the restaurant, these are the ingredients you're required to have before you actually can make it. So we can just copy this over and use the same ingredients as our item group. Now we have a couple other prefabs here. We have our icon prefab and our display prefab. Now, generally, you would make slightly different ones of these for everything, but I'm just going to use, for the sake of the example, the same prefab as the actual item. So resulting menu items is going to be an interesting one. This means once you unlock this dish or this specific card, this is what a customer can order. This could be anything from the dish that it's actually looking for, or you could put a garbage bag in there. Why would you put a garbage bag? I don't have a clue, but I'm going to put a garbage bag as well. So this is going to be new dish.menu item. So what item are we looking for? So we need to get an item. So we're casting item. We can do GDO utils, but we're going to have to do something slightly different here. We're going to get a custom game data object. Yeah. So display prefab, as Milo said, that's used on the franchise projector. And that's also used on the unlock screen when you've just finished a run and you unlock a new dish. Unless you're using this as a base dish, you really don't need that. Icon prefab is the actual icon that's going to display on the paper in the lobby. So what we're going to do, we're going to grab a reference here to our item group type, and just going to grab the game data object from it. Now for the phase, this is going to be a phase.main, and weight is going to be 1. Now the weight is the chance that the customer orders this item. We're going to set it to 1. Now for the sake of giggles, get existing GDO item references.garbage. Bin bag. There we go. They can now order garbage bags. Why they're going to do that, I don't know, but if they want a garbage bag, they can have a garbage bag. The next thing we need to do is the actual recipe. So this is an override that we can do. And this is going to be another sort of localization dictionary. So we're going to have the default as English. And this is going to be the recipe for how we actually create this card. Combine wine and milk and you get Wilk. If you get this reference, I'm happy. It's sort of an Australian meme, but not everyone's going to understand that, unfortunately. Got our mod. This is all in our assets, so we're going to build this asset bundle, and that should be pretty well good to go. So once that's built, we'll be able to go over to our writer. All I know is Pilk exists. What's Pilk? That's one I haven't heard of. Pepsi and milk. That is disgusting. We over here have Jilk. It's just gin and milk. So now that that's built, we can actually run this. This will not work because I didn't register a dish. Apparently Pepsi made a Christmas ad for it. That sounds disgusting. All you have is milk? I'd prefer just the milk. So once PlateUp's launched, we'll be able to actually see this in our lobby. So as you see, we have our examples smack bang in the middle here. This is a new feature in the Kitchen Lib beta. If you have a mod that is installed locally to your machine, the dish will spawn here. So let's create this and let's do it in the witch hut. As you can see up the very top, it has given us our milk and it's given us our wine. All right, let's get our tables over here just so it's nice and quick and easy for us. And our wine all the way down here. Let's actually get some customers in. So our item group, what we're doing, why not put them up to the counter? Yeah, because F it. So what our item group is, we have our wine bottle and we have our milk. We can combine these now and we're getting Wilk. And there we go, that material does exist now. So they both want garbage bags. Of course, they both want garbage bags. Yeah, I don't play the game enough to bother about strategy. All right, this is not being a good example for me. I'm hoping one of them orders some Wilk so I can prove that it works. Knowing my luck, the next order is not going to be Wilk. And if it's not Wilk, you'll just have to. Yeah, I should have gotten the booking desk. I should have bought it. You're just gonna have to trust that they do order Wilk. You're just gonna have to trust that they order Wilk. Now let's just jump back into this cold turkey restaurant and have a look. It's fine because it's 50-50, yeah. So here we go. Here's our custom material as well. So you can see that our custom material has loaded and worked absolutely perfectly. You can see it's got the gold around the edges too. So this has worked brilliantly for our materials. Our dishes worked perfectly. Our custom item group has worked perfectly. Everything is working as intended. You can get this build from the GitHub that I sent earlier. By all means, I'll pop this back in the chat again. And you have your example assets and mod template here. So as far as I'm concerned, but with the yeah, that's right. So it is a heavy dependence on how many cards you have and the weight of each item that's in that menu slot. The mesh is aligned like that. It kind of looks like a sentence to summon Shrek. I mean, maybe it is. Is that an issue? You don't want some lovely Shrek? Where is my example here? Hey, Monica, I can see you're here. This is a bug that you can send to AJ. When there are multiple blueprints on top of each other, you can't buy anything. So yeah, we have this working as intended. You won't have multiple on base game general. I mean, it could possibly happen. Maybe. Regardless. Our materials are working. Our appliance is working. Dish is working. And item group, they're all working. Do we have any questions about these three GDOs? If not, I'll let Yari have some words. And other than that, I think that's a decent wrap up for Kitchen Lib. And I'll allow for some Q&A on just various mod development.
I don't have much to say. I think he did a great job explaining everything there is to get started with Kitchen Library. Yeah. I just need to get in some late commits. It turns out I had a lot of stuff I meant to flush I never did.
Oh, wow. From a lore perspective, how does Shrek cook the turkey?
How does Shrek cook the turkey?
I don't know. Does he use the dragon? Maybe he can use the dragon.
He gets Donkey to do it, yeah. That makes sense.
He'll get Donkey
Checks
to
out.
get the dragon. Yep, that works. Great teacher. Everything is easy to follow. Thank you very much. Do we have any generalized questions regarding just mod development or Kitchen Lib? Because this was meant to originally be our Q&A session, and obviously this hasn't turned out to be our Q&A session. By all means, Milo, you can jump on in. Blagle, if you want, you can jump on in as well. I believe you have the admin role for that. How do you use hold points? Okay. We're pretty well done with KL, yeah. So hold points, like I've showed earlier in our example appliance, we have our hold point here in the middle. We can either move this around. This is where our item's got to display when it's being held. In the code, what we have to do is actually register our hold point in a hold point container. So we need to create that container as a component and add that to our prefab. And there's a variable called hold point in the container that we just point to the transform of our hold point. Now that I think about it, I could possibly actually add this as an automatic thing for KitchenLib. It might be quite good to have that automatically done, because I don't see any reason why there will be a hold point game object and not have it used. You thought it was? No, hold points aren't automatic. We don't have that automatic just yet. But that is something I'll look into.
I'm glad we both found things that we should probably put into Kitchen Library.
So yeah, we have a really fast cooking turkey now. Was there any other generic KitchenLib or development questions that we have? The dragon is really breathing on that turkey. Yes, it is. The dragon do be breathing on that turkey. The Shrek's front wrapped down. Yep. All right. Well, I think that's going to be a wrapping up point then for our KitchenLib workshop. We have got our wiki page for KitchenLib set up. Here is this for everyone. It's got a list of all our utilities, game data objects. I decided not to go over the preference manager because we have preference system and that is a lot easier to actually use than our standard preference manager. So I do suggest you use the preference system over the KitchenLib preference manager, if that is making any sense. Thanks for the workshop. Not a problem, Monica. All right. Thanks everyone for coming on in. Are there any final words, Yari?
Nope. Thank you everyone
Nope.
for
All
being
right
here.
then. All right. We'll have this workshop uploaded to YouTube hopefully by the end of the week. What's today? Today's Friday. Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have everything up. And you can always pop into the Dev General chat if you need extra questions or extra help. We're always around to help. Thank you very much. All right. Everyone have a good day. I'll speak to you all later.